Imagine this. It is a bright, sun-drenched spring morning in 1925 in the quiet farming town of Momence, Illinois. Main Street is alive with the sound of a brass band playing the Star-Spangled Banner, American flags snapping in the breeze, and a crowd of excited locals gathered in their Sunday best. A brand new bank has just thrown open its gleaming white doors. Brass plaques shine in the sunlight reading Illinois State Trust and Savings Bank. Inside, marble counters catch the light from brand new electric fixtures. Tellers in crisp white shirts and bow ties smile behind polished brass cages, and a massive steel vault door stands dramatically open so everyone can see neat, tempting stacks of cash. The manager, a dapper man in a loud, eye-catching yellow suit, gold watch chain glinting across his vest, quick smile and iron handshake, stands at the door personally greeting every single customer who walks in. "This is the bank for the working people of Illinois," he tells them warmly, looking each farmer, shopkeeper, and factory worker straight in the eye. "Your money is safe here, and it will grow faster than anywhere else in the state. We're here to give ordinary folks like you a real chance in these booming Roaring Twenties." Farmers who had struggled through years of falling crop prices, shopkeepers from Kankakee and Bradley, factory workers, small-town doctors, lawyers, and even a few sharp-eyed Chicago businessmen line up with their life savings. By the end of the very first week, more than $500,000, an absolute fortune in 1925 dollars, has poured through those doors. Local newspapers run glowing front-page stories calling it the People's Bank that is finally making Illinois strong. Word spreads like wildfire across the entire state. People in Peoria, Springfield, Rockford, and even down in Cairo talk about this miracle bank that is giving hard-working Americans a real shot at prosperity. But every single dollar that went into that vault was a lie. The marble counters were cheap wood painted to look expensive. The vault was almost empty except for bundles of cut-up newspaper wrapped in real bills on top. The ledgers were filled with made-up names. The tellers were hired actors, and the smiling manager in the bright yellow suit was Joseph "Yellow Kid" Weil, one of the greatest, most audacious, and most charming con artists America has ever produced. This is the astonishing true story of how one man and his small gang created a completely fake bank that fooled an entire state, pocketed millions of dollars, and vanished into thin air while the victims never suspected a thing until it was far too late. It is a tale of the Jazz Age, of greed, trust, psychology, and the dark underbelly of the American dream in Prohibition-era Illinois. Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to this channel. Whether you're a true crime lover who can't get enough of wild stories, a history buff fascinated by the Roaring Twenties, or just someone who enjoys jaw-dropping tales of pure audacity and human nature, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most outrageous financial cons in United States history, the fake bank that fooled the entire state of Illinois. Grab your coffee, settle in, turn the volume up, and let's step back into 1925 for a story that still shocks people almost 100 years later. Joseph "Yellow Kid" Weil was born on July 1, 1875, right in the heart of Chicago's bustling West Side. His parents were German Jewish immigrants who ran a small neighborhood grocery store. From the moment he could talk, young Joseph showed an extraordinary talent for persuasion and an absolute dislike for anything that smelled like honest, everyday work. He dropped out of school early and began running small street-level cons, selling fake gold watches on street corners, rigging card games in smoky back alleys, and giving phony horse race tips to gullible gamblers who thought they were getting insider information. By the time he reached his early 20s, he had already earned the nickname Yellow Kid because of the loud, bright yellow suits he always wore, inspired by the popular comic strip character of the day. Those yellow suits became his trademark, a walking advertisement that screamed confidence, flash, and success. By the 1910s, Weil had moved far beyond street grifts. He had graduated to the big con, elaborate, months-long schemes that required fake offices, forged documents, hired actors, lookouts, and masterful psychological manipulation. He specialized in financial frauds of every kind. He set up fake stock brokerages that looked more legitimate than the real ones on LaSalle Street. He created fake mining companies that owned non-existent gold mines in the West. He even ran fake gambling clubs where the house always won, but the marks left feeling like they had almost beaten the system. His guiding philosophy was brutally simple and devastatingly effective. People trust institutions far more than they trust individuals. If you can make something look completely official, the right building, the right stationery, the right story, the right brass plaque, ordinary, hard-working people will hand over their life savings without asking too many uncomfortable questions. And in the wild, money-mad years of the Roaring Twenties, the state of Illinois was the perfect hunting ground. Chicago was the undisputed capital of prohibition crime. Al Capone and his outfit were flooding the city with bootleg whiskey and Tommy guns. The stock market was soaring on 10% margin loans. Real estate swindlers were selling the Brooklyn Bridge to wide-eyed out-of-towners every single week. Everyday Americans, farmers, shopkeepers, factory workers, small-town doctors, lawyers, and even a few sharp-eyed Chicago businessmen line up with their life savings. By the end of the very first week, more than $500,000, an absolute fortune in 1925 dollars, has poured through those doors. Local newspapers run glowing front-page stories calling it the People's Bank that is finally making Illinois strong. Word spreads like wildfire across the entire state. People in Peoria, Springfield, Rockford, and even down in Cairo talk about this miracle bank that is giving hard-working Americans a real shot at prosperity. But every single dollar that went into that vault was a lie. The marble counters were cheap wood painted to look expensive. The vault was almost empty except for bundles of cut-up newspaper wrapped in real bills on top. The ledgers were filled with made-up names, the tellers were hired actors, and the smiling manager in the bright yellow suit was Joseph Yellow Kid Weil, one of the greatest, most audacious, and most charming con artists America has ever produced. The gang kept the illusion alive with brilliant, subtle touches that made the bank feel warm and trustworthy. They issued real-looking passbooks with handwritten entries that looked exactly like those from legitimate banks. They paid out small withdrawals immediately and without question to build instant trust. They even approved a few small, low-interest loans to local farmers so the bank would appear generous and community-minded. Word of mouth spread faster than any newspaper ad ever could. People in neighboring towns began talking about that wonderful new bank in Momence. Newspapers in Chicago, Rockford, and Springfield ran positive stories praising the new institution. Letters arrived from downstate towns asking when branches would open near them. The entire state of Illinois was completely, enthusiastically fooled. But Joseph Weil was never a man to stop at one success. Using the growing reputation of the Momence Bank as proof of legitimacy, he quietly opened a second branch in nearby Bradley and a fake brokerage office in the heart of Chicago's Loop. He used portions of the deposited money to buy flashy new cars and throw private parties for bigger marks, convincing them to invest even larger sums. He even approached a few state politicians, dropping carefully worded hints that the bank could become a useful vehicle for political contributions and community projects. The scam grew so large and so believable that it actually began to affect the real economy of northern Illinois. Small businesses that had deposited their payroll money suddenly found themselves unable to meet payroll when the fake bank finally collapsed. The end came suddenly and dramatically in the fall of 1925. Weil had planned to keep the operation running for at least another month or two, but one of his lower-level accomplices got greedy and tried to cash a large forged check at a legitimate Chicago bank. The forgery was spotted almost immediately. Word spread like lightning through the banking community.
When frantic customers began rushing to the Momence bank to withdraw their money, they found the doors locked tight and the building completely empty. The manager in the bright yellow suit had vanished without a trace. The vault was empty, except for bundles of cut-up newspaper wrapped in real bills on top. The ledgers were pure fiction. More than $800,000, the modern equivalent of over $14 million today, had disappeared into thin air. The scandal exploded like a bomb across the entire state of Illinois. Farmers who had lost their life savings held emergency meetings in church basements and town halls. Newspapers screamed headlines that could be read across the Midwest. Fake bank swindles Illinois families. Yellow kid strikes again. State legislators demanded immediate investigations into banking regulations. The governor appeared before the press and promised swift justice and new laws to protect citizens. But Weil and his top gang members had already fled to Canada and then to Europe, living like kings in luxury hotels and first-class ocean liners off the stolen money. Some of the lower-level actors and local hires were arrested and tried, but they knew almost nothing about the full scope of the operation. Weil himself later slipped back into the United States under a new identity and continued running smaller cons for decades. The human cost of the fake bank was heartbreaking and long-lasting. One farmer in Momence, who had deposited every penny of his life savings, lost his land and ultimately took his own life in despair. Another family in Kankakee was forced to send their children to an orphanage because they could no longer afford to feed them. Small businesses that had trusted the bank with their payroll money went bankrupt overnight. Families who had believed they were finally getting ahead in the Roaring Twenties suddenly found themselves penniless. The scandal shook public confidence in banks across northern Illinois for years afterward. People who had once walked into any bank with complete trust now looked at every new financial institution with suspicion. New state banking laws were rushed through the legislature, requiring stricter inspections, higher reserve requirements, and closer oversight of any new bank opening in Illinois. The Yellow Kid had not only stolen millions, he had forced the entire state to rewrite its rules to prevent anyone from ever repeating his masterpiece. Weil lived to the remarkable age of 100, dying peacefully in Chicago in 1976. He never showed any real remorse for the lives he had ruined. In his autobiography, published in the 1940s, he bragged openly about the fake bank that fooled an entire state. He claimed his victims were greedy people who deserved to lose their money because they had been too eager to get rich quick. "I never robbed anyone who didn't want to be robbed," he liked to say, with a wink and a smile. Over his long career, he had fooled sheriffs, businessmen, politicians, and even a few hardened gangsters. He once tried to sell the entire Cook County Hospital for $150,000 and sold the same piece of land to multiple buyers on the same day. But the Illinois State Trust and Savings Bank remained his undisputed masterpiece, the single greatest, most perfectly executed con of his entire life. The story of the Yellow Kid and his fake bank is far more than just a colorful chapter from American true crime history. It is a powerful window into the Roaring Twenties, when the nation was racing forward on the intoxicating promise of easy wealth, while basic human trust was dangerously cheap. It shows us how a single man, armed with nothing more than charm, a loud yellow suit, a convincing set of brass plaques, and a deep understanding of human psychology, could shake the financial foundations of an entire state. It is a timeless reminder that the most dangerous scams are never the obvious ones. They're the ones that look the most legitimate, the ones that play perfectly on our deepest hopes and fears. Even today, when we see new banks, investment opportunities, cryptocurrency schemes, or financial apps that promise too much too quickly, we would do well to remember the Yellow Kid and the fake bank in Momence, Illinois, the bank that fooled an entire state and left behind a legacy of caution that still echoes through American financial history more than 90 years later. Weil's gang had mastered the psychology of the big con in ways that still teach lessons today. They understood that people in small farming towns trusted local institutions far more than they trusted big city banks. They knew that a friendly manager in a bright yellow suit could disarm even the most suspicious farmer. They knew that paying out a few small withdrawals early on would create the powerful illusion of legitimacy. They studied local newspapers every single day to learn exactly what worries kept the farmers and shopkeepers awake at night. Falling crop prices, high interest rates on loans, the need for a people's bank that actually cared about ordinary folks, and they tailored every word of their pitch to solve those exact problems. The preparation for the scam was military in its precision and attention to detail. Lefty Louie forged not only the bank's official letterhead, but also fake letters from the Illinois State Banking Department, officially approving the new institution. They hired a real printer to produce passbooks and deposit slips that were virtually indistinguishable from those used by legitimate banks. They paid a local carpenter to build a fake vault door with a working combination lock that impressed every visitor who saw it. The entire gang rehearsed their roles for weeks in a rented Chicago warehouse. The tellers practiced counting money and filling out deposit slips with perfect professionalism. The loan officer memorized long scripts about low-interest loans for struggling farmers. Every possible question a customer might ask was anticipated and rehearsed. When the bank finally opened its doors, the operation ran like a well-oiled machine from the very first day. Customers were greeted by name because the gang had carefully studied local directories and church membership lists in advance. Small gifts, pens and pencils printed on the bank's name were handed out freely. Coffee and fresh donuts were served in the lobby every morning to create a warm, welcoming atmosphere. The entire place felt like a genuine community bank run by people who truly cared. Customers left the building feeling proud that they had made a smart decision for their families and their future. The money flowed in faster than even the ever-confident yellow kid had dared to hope. Within 6 weeks, the gang had collected enough real cash to live like royalty for the rest of their lives if they had chosen to stop right there.
Weil himself stayed mostly in the background at first, playing the role of the busy president who had important meetings in Chicago. He would appear occasionally in his bright yellow suit to shake hands, pose for photographs with local dignitaries, and deliver short, inspiring speeches about building a stronger Illinois together. Those photographs later appeared in small-town newspapers, adding even more credibility to the entire operation. The gang even staged a grand opening ceremony complete with a local brass band, free lemonade for the children, and a stirring speech about opportunity for the working man in the great state of Illinois. The success of the con was so complete and so convincing that it began to attract unwanted attention from real bankers. A legitimate bank in Kankakee sent a representative to quietly investigate the new competitor. Weil charmed the man over an expensive lunch at the best restaurant in town, gave him a personal tour of the facilities, and sent him away with a confidential financial report showing strong reserves and healthy growth. The representative returned to his own bank, completely convinced that the new institution was not only legitimate, but actually a model for how small-town banking should be done. He even recommended it to some of his own customers. As the money continued to pile up in the Chicago safety deposit boxes, the gang began to get slightly careless. One accomplice started flashing large bills in Chicago speakeasies. Another tried to deposit some of the stolen cash in a real bank using a forged endorsement. These small mistakes planted the first seeds of the con's eventual collapse. When the forgery was finally spotted by a sharp-eyed teller in Chicago, the real banking authorities in Springfield were alerted. Investigators descended on Momence within days. The bank doors were found locked tight. The manager in the yellow suit had disappeared without a trace. The vault was empty.
the entire operation had been nothing more than carefully staged theater. The scandal made front-page news across the Midwest for weeks. The Chicago Tribune ran a long, detailed series of articles exposing exactly how the fake bank had been built from the ground up. State auditors estimated the total loss at more than $800,000. Hundreds of families were financially ruined. Lawsuits were filed against anyone connected to the bank, but the main perpetrators were already safely out of the country. Some of the lower-level actors and local hires were arrested and tried, but they knew almost nothing about the full scope of the operation. Weil himself slipped back into the United States years later under a new identity and continued running smaller cons until old age finally slowed him down. In his later years, Weil loved to tell the story of the Illinois State Trust and Savings Bank to anyone who would listen. Reporters, fellow con men, even curious young people who tracked him down. He considered it his greatest artistic achievement. He had not just fooled a handful of marks, he had fooled an entire state's worth of hard-working, honest people. He had taken the deep trust that Illinoisans placed in their local banks and turned it into the most effective weapon against them. The fake bank shook public confidence in the entire banking system of Northern Illinois for years afterward. New regulations were passed. People became far more suspicious of any new financial institution that promised high returns with no risk. The Yellow Kid had left a permanent mark on the state he had once fooled so completely. The story of the fake bank that fooled an entire state is far more than just a colorful chapter from American true crime history. It is a mirror held up to the Roaring Twenties, when the nation was racing forward on the intoxicating promise of easy wealth, while basic human trust was dangerously cheap. It shows us how a single man with nothing more than charm, a loud yellow suit, a convincing set of brass plaques, and a deep understanding of human psychology could shake the financial foundations of an entire state. It is a timeless reminder that the most dangerous scams are never the obvious ones. They are the ones that look the most legitimate, the ones that play perfectly on our deepest hopes and fears, and the ones that make us believe we are making a smart decision for our families and our future. Even today, when we see new banks, investment opportunities, cryptocurrency schemes, or financial apps that promise too much too quickly, we would do well to remember the Yellow Kid and the fake bank in Momence, Illinois, the bank that fooled an entire state and left behind a legacy of caution that still echoes through American financial history more than 90 years later. And that, my friends, is the incredible true story of the fake bank that fooled an entire state. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. I hope this wild, astonishing tale of audacity, greed, breathtaking nerve, and the dark side of the American dream left you smiling, shaking your head in disbelief, and maybe even checking your own bank statements twice. Wherever you are in the world right now, I wish you all the very best. May your days be filled with wonder and honesty, your adventures stay safe, and your own dreams be as bold as the Yellow Kid's smile, but grounded in real trust. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe for more astonishing true stories from history, and drop a comment below telling me what's the most unbelievable con or scam you've ever heard about or experienced. Until next time, stay curious, stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the greatest cons are the ones that look the most trustworthy. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.